Hi, Frank. Can we see you?
Hi, yeah, hi guys. Yeah,
Your video is still off, so just trying to.
I don't see any. I don't think you can see me.
No, not yet.
And I've assigned my camera, so I'm not really sure what's happening.
You wanna, Karthik, any ideas? You think you
hear
want
me
to?
though, right?
I hear you very clearly and very, very well, actually.
Okay, and now I can't seem to hear you.
Oh,
Hang on a
okay.
second
Can you?
here, okay. Yeah, I can hear you now, and but I think you.
Very, very well, actually.
Okay, and now I can't seem to hear you. Okay, let me just try something here.
Okay.
Okay, and
If you want to just go back in, go back out and come back in, that might fix it.
oh,
yeah,
there I am.
beautiful.
Okay, hi guys.
Great. You were
Good to
just
see
like
ya.
on your website.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
putting that all in the middle of a pandemic, it's a tech skill.
Yes.
It's good to see you. So let's officially get off, if you don't mind, Frank. If you're all set to go on your end.
Sure, absolutely.
Great.
Sorry guys, I'm hearing an echo.
A little bit on echo here.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's on Frank's side or.
Yeah, I don't hear an echo from from my side.
The echo is gone now. Oh, no, it's still there.
Okay, try that. Can you guys talk real quick?
Yeah. Can you hear us now?
I can hear you. Do you hear me okay?
I hear you. Kartika, you want to call it? There's definitely echo from my side, isn't it?
Seems like there's an echo loud.
You hear an echo?
Yeah, even from Kartika for some reason. There was not one before. When we
Yeah,
didn't
and
have
I don't hear an echo from you guys, so I'm not sure.
Kartika, can we just mute it? I would assume.
Say something, guys.
Hello. Hi guys. Hi everyone.
An echo.
There's definitely
Frank,
echo.
let's do this. Frank, can you mute yourself, please?
Sure. Here I go.
Okay, now Lavi say something.
Great. Kartika, I don't think we hear an echo.
Yeah, so Frank, seems like the echo is at your end.
The echo's on my end. Okay.
We'll just mute and unmute when we need to. How's that?
Let me
Yeah,
change.
that one.
Okay, how's that? I changed my camera source. Is that better?
Oh, great. Perfect. Oh, no, it's just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Was that it?
No, there's still a little bit of an echo. So maybe when one of us is speaking, you can mute for a second and then we come back. We can try that.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, so let's officially and formally kicking off then. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our viewers joining us from across the world today. Welcome to another edition of Pandemic Punditry's Marketing in a Pandemic series. We are delighted to have the legendary Frank Spillers with us today. Frank is the founder and CEO of the award-winning user experience consultancy, Experience Dynamics. He works with the world's leading brands to deliver cutting-edge strategy for products, services, and experiences. And Frank has consulted on over 600 UX projects for organizations like Nike, IBM, Microsoft, Intel, Logitech, and even the World Bank. Welcome to Pandemic Punditry, Frank.
Hi guys, nice to be here. Thanks so much, Lavindra and Karthika. Nice to join you today. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Great. So curiously, I wanted to sort of understand, did you find UX or did UX find you?
I'm pretty sure I found UX, but I came in through the very high-tech door of 3D virtual environments, and that's kind of how I was drawn to UX. I realized the bleeding edge of this technology was like useless if it was not grounded in good usability and good user experience. So that's how I got into this.
So you found it, and that's the story essentially, right? And I know you had a master's in cognitive science. So was that something that you decided to do later on, or did that sort of compel you to sort of or equip you to do UX?
No, it was. I mean, it was purely the potential of the technology in the mid '90s, early '90s, and mid '90s, virtual reality technology. In its modern kind of incarnation, the first incarnation, the second one was about 5 years ago, and it went into a deep freeze for like 15 years or so. But that first wave of VR is like, wow, this technology has this power, and there was a lot of excitement about the internet, because that was just coming online as well, and then the two of those things merging. But it took me a couple of years to find cognitive science and to find that area. Cognitive science is where UX and usability sits, and it actually took me a while because it's kind of obscure. These days it's less obscure and it's easier to sort of get into the door of UX. But I think what's interesting is those same challenges and those same things that inspire me with the technology are still at issue today. For example, when the pandemic hit back in March of 2020, one of the first things that came to my mind, like literally the second day of lockdown, I was like, okay, where's the VR? How can we collaborate with immersive, telepresence, and then I thought, well, okay, Apple is probably switching all their development towards what I think is the killer app, which is social VR, collaborative virtual environments, and it's in the next maybe 10 to 15 years that we start to see that coming down the pipe. And already this year, there's been a little bit of movement on that, but it's like, where is it in a pandemic when you need it,
Katika?
Yeah, that's interesting that you touched on that, Frank, because the next thing we really wanted to ask you was, so obviously you've been in the business of UX and user experience for more than 20 years, right? And in that time, what are some of the significant changes you've seen the industry go through, and where do you think it's headed now?
Wow, there's been a lot of changes, on many different levels. So when I started getting into the field of UX, there wasn't even the standard terminology to call it UX, In fact, it was information architecture was the big buzzword.
Yeah, I remember
in
that.
1990. Yeah. And, behind it, there's always been human-centered design or user-centered design, which is, the kind of industry standard and the ISO, International Standards Organization standard that sits underneath this methodology, which also became design thinking. That was IDEO's kind of rebranding. They added some more kind of parts and pieces and new energy to it. But basically, it's human-centered design underneath it. So yeah, I think that the whole field has matured. The paradox, of course, is that there are still many organizations that are struggling to understand UX and to really understand it, to understand its very strategic power, its power as a business tool, its power, its transformational power. At a societal level and at a product service level or experience level. And so that's still a challenge, but it's gotten a lot better, and, at least you can have that conversation. Like when I was getting started, I didn't even know that was a thing. This, I'm working on a book on UX management, actually. And it's funny because it's the book that I wish I had when I got started in the field. I teach a class on UX management too. And, I have people saying to me like, "Oh my God, this information is so useful, and you've really helped me, get my company going in the right direction, or help me take my practice to the next level." And it's just because that information wasn't around, and we've had to learn it, and we've had to language around it. We just haven't had the common shared terms and processes and structures and so, you can just imagine anyone who's not familiar with UX or excited about it just draw some pretty pictures over there and, come back with a nice looking, user interface and, that's UX, and it's not even close to what UX is, it's just like maybe the third part of the 5-piece puzzle,
So, interestingly, so you have this sort of you're drawn to UX because of the sort of augmented reality, virtual reality sort of things that are coming up. So why is the social side of the customer experience critical now more than ever for you? I mean, what do you actually mean by that, and what is the advice that you would give marketers around that?
Yeah. So the other thing that and this is why I love your show, you guys, because even the title "Pandemic Punditry" is, I thought, oh, that's cute, but your content is really great. The conversations you're holding, I think, are really great. But one of the things that immediately kind of struck me when COVID hit was like, okay, reevaluate everything, and then have a plan B, and then what's the third thing? Resilience, right? So, and that's on a personal level, it's on a professional level, it's on a business level, and of course it's on a societal level now because we have this shared experience. We all know what COVID is, we all know what lockdown is and so forth, but this is why the social side of customer experience or UX is so critical now, is because we all know what distance is, isolation. So what does that mean? Okay, well, you can be lonely and you can be sad, or you can be disconnected, or you can be sitting on the phone for many, many hours waiting on this customer support. Or like me, I'm still waiting now 4 or 5 months for a credit on an airline on a holiday that I booked, that I was promised. And I tried to inquire 2 or 3 times afterwards and still nothing. And it's like, how long can you blame the COVID for poor customer service? This is the game of like, how many months can you keep saying, oh, well, the COVID, our customers are, how long can you do that? But the reason social is really important is because we have become disconnected from, right, public life, yes, to be honest, right? And at the same time, paradoxically or ironically, we've become more reliant on online, right? So you're saying like, why do you need, we're connecting here by, Zoom or by, YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever. We're connected, we can just pick up the phone. We're on Messenger, on Facebook, or whatever the equivalent in your country might be, because Facebook isn't dominant everywhere yet, but it's getting there.
Yes, yes.
But so then you say, well, what's the deal? And then is he talking about social media? The social media is already there. Why? What's the, we have social. And I'm not talking about social media. I'm talking about let's start with that one keyword, connection. What do I mean by this? Is like, fill the empty spaces. We've been left with gaps. COVID has shown us cracks in the wall or the machine or whatever it is. It's cracks in the customer service, cracks in the experience, cracks in learning, online meetings, online learning, miserable, right? Mm-hmm. And over, customer service. You're on the phone, you're just sending an email, you just can't get through. But there are other opportunities below the surface that were cracks already. And this is the thing for me with COVID is, from a business standpoint, the leadership imperative is like, step up and use this as an opportunity to heal, to fix, to repair, to reevaluate, to recalibrate, to renew, to restore a good customer experience, a strong UX offering, a good product, a good service, a good experience that you can, and so this is, if you didn't have it before, like you see this with restaurants and small businesses, it's the small business owners that are the most instructive, because their response is either like freak out and do nothing, and close and then say, we are opening when the COVID is over, when they get the vaccine, and there are certain governments and presidents that act that way as well, right? Don't come back when it's reopened. And they're saying that it's going to be at least another year. It might be another 2, there's second waves now and things like that. True second waves now, not the imagined second waves that we had in the US earlier in the springtime. It was just a continuation of the first one. So fill the gaps, fill the empty spaces. And what does this connection mean? It means that this is the opportunity for you to find out what your customers, what your users, what your constituents, your citizens, whoever it is that you serve, your audience, find out how they're doing. What are their needs? What are their expectations? What are their fears, uncertainties? We live in the time of uncertainty and worry. What is it that they're worrying about? And how can you learn and reflect and then build that into your COVID strategy, your resilience strategy, and to do it quickly? Don't wait 3 months or 6 months or next year or 20, in the future. Do it now. You can do user research online. You can build journey maps. You can share those with teams online. You can jump into virtual collaborative spaces, as some companies are doing with their product teams right now. So connection is the key, and I'll talk more about it because it's so critical, but that's basically why we need to focus on our connections are social. If COVID has showed us any one thing, it's how dependent we are on social fabric, social interaction, social, so we talk social distance, but social closeness. As soon as they took that away from us, it's like people are like, craving. What am I doing? So this is this place we live in, and from there, where can we find new innovations and new light that we can shine in areas to bring growth and to bring better experiences than maybe were even before.
The key point that you were making just now, Frank, was that I think there was initially in the beginning, say in March or April or even May, some people say, it'll go away, in 6 months. So we'll wait out any changes we need to make because, COVID will go away. And then we can come back and sort of restart business as it was, right? So clearly, I think now in October, it's clear it's not going to go away. So I think your sort of call to action is important, which is get it. I mean, do it. Start doing it now. Get the teams together. Start doing this new sort of experience design for your customers or your constituents immediately. I mean, you already probably have wasted time if you've been waiting till today. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely. I think, it's in what is this, is it just like making things beautiful, nice interfaces? No, it's about looking at what's broken, like analyzing that customer journey, like seeing how they're dealing with it, like, and I mean now COVID, like customer journey, understanding those customer needs and pain points, and then bringing that into an elegantly crafted solution, an elegantly crafted experience, product, service experience. There's no excuse for sloppiness. There's just way too much sloppiness. It's unreal. And you know why it is, because it's like, oh, it's COVID, so of course you're getting the bad experience. Now here's your cup of tea or coffee. It's cold. It's COVID. That's essentially what you're getting, and there's absolutely no need for that. There's a greater need actually that we feel the connection that brands make with us. That we feel the connection that's public spaces, that private spaces, retail spaces, healthcare spaces, whatever it is, and I've heard stories of, just going to a doctor and then they open the door and they talk to you through a crack and they say, you can't come in here. And then, do you have an appointment, and slamming the door and then talking through the glass and you can't hear. and many, many other experiences. My daughter took her cat to the vet in Portland, Oregon, in the States, and they told her to wait in the car for 8 hours. For 8 hours, she was waiting, and then they actually, after about 6.5 hours, they let her come in and sit in a waiting room after she asked and complained and so forth. And then she waited there another 2.5 hours, and then finally left with no service performed, and all that could have been repaired there was to say, look, do you live within 15, 20 minutes drive? Everyone's driving in America. So do you live within 15, 20 minutes walk, drive, or public transport? Yes. No? Okay, then we're going to have to require you to wait. Just send a text. We'll text you when it's, it just seems like such a simple fix, but they couldn't do it. No, they couldn't do it. And they made her and the cat in, very hot temperature as well. The cat's there for he's already sick and now he's there for 8 hours, it's like, and that's just a parody of of the lack of responsiveness, of the lack of resilience in terms of that need to respond and to be creative and to be flexible.
Karthika, you had a question for Frank as well, right?
Yes, I did actually, Frank. So Lavi and I are obviously big fans of the Experience Economy book by Pine and Gilmore, right? And in that, they sort of outline in great detail how economies have evolved from like commodities to goods to services and now to experiences, right? And in a world where experiences are king, how can the art and science of UX design be a guide to creating transformative experiences?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. We know what the answer to that is. And by the way, just to comment that in a COVID context, your customers are embodying these experiences. Do you know what I mean by that? So embodiment means you feel it in your body. COVID was like a trauma to the psyche, or at least a trauma to the societal psyche. Maybe personally you're like, I got the COVID, the mask doesn't bother you, or maybe you were like, I don't wear a mask, I don't do that, and some people like are trying to, there's like a mixed response, right? So whatever that, but you feel
American experience.
you feel COVID, and one of the concerns I had when when COVID was unfolding is I thought, this is, your brand will be remembered after COVID and possibly even intergenerationally, because your children, you're like, no, we're not going in there. It's too crowded, or we don't know what to do, or somebody, the service was bit, we got distressed. So already it's almost like designing in a high stress situation. How do you design? So what does, Karthika, you asked, how can, CX UX design methodology, what is the answer to this? It goes back to connection, okay, to facilitating connection. So in other words, collaboration with your customers, with your users. I mentioned doing user research, doing customer research, finding out what they're doing. It requires connecting to their values. There was a comment from somebody there on the live stream, on the live, about that COVID-19 should act as a CX accelerator to boost business sustainability and business resilience for sure, which is a measured benchmark, by the way, before COVID, nothing to do with COVID, but business resilience is measured country by country. And then there's also one that you can do for your own business. But like how you understand customers, for example, in the United States right now, not only do we have COVID, and then we had all these fires this past summer, but we also have a social tension, if you will, a second civil rights movement that's occurring. That's foundational. It's not as you said in your last interview there a few weeks ago, designing for cognitive bias. This situation is deep. It's foundational. It's structural. It's the entire society is being structurally challenged, and hopefully fully transformed. Finally, right? Not just on paper or not just token, but a full transformation to the so-called melting pot that America's has been pretending, or has been in some places, not in others, or some neighborhoods, not, and so forth and so on. So back to our customers, what do? We connect with their values. Why do we connect with their values? Because you have to understand what's important to customers. That's what values are, right? So whether it's COVID, whether it's their experience, if they're African American or Latinx, LGBTQ, trans, whatever, doesn't matter what the community is, to understand and connect with your customers where they're at. Now, why is this important? Because customers are telling us that it's important to them. And so there have been several studies this year during the COVID, and two things that come up. One is, inclusive design. Customers want to see brands being inclusive, and they want to see diversity essentially represented. They want to see people want to live in a racially harmonious like space, whether they're shopping or being served by a customer, it doesn't matter what it is. And the second one is sustainability, because in addition to social fabric, we have our physical environment, our environmental, so there was a survey that was done very recently, just last month, by Forrester Research, who has a sustainability framework that they rolled out as well, and a webinar for that. And they've surveyed their customers and found that sustainability, it's like something like 65% of American consumers want sustainability reflected in a brand experience. So it's connecting with values. And now, if you didn't know those two, if you didn't do the research to know, like, what, now as a brand, as an experience with a product or whatever, you need to understand how that plays out with your customers, and if you do deep listening, you go past just, adding a little, tokenistic environmentalism or tokenistic diversity or tokenistic accessibility for users with disabilities, right? People with disabilities. So you can tokenistic, we've done all the tokenistic stuff, and there are some good examples of taking it to the full extreme, but this is where the money is. The money is, in fact, there was a Salesforce study, Shopper First study. There's been a couple of studies, actually. IBM Marketing also did a separate study. They found that values was one of the key drivers. Up there was mobile, so ease, and they're talking e-commerce here, right. So mobile, ease of purchase, and values was in one of the top drivers for customers. So this, like, what you're seeing on the news and what you experience, through a lens of COVID, the world is in flux and in change. And my message is, with regard to our topic today, is understand those social dynamics and what I mean is, like, how people collaborate. How are people working with your experience? Just take shopping, for example. Shopping for like a big ticket item now, like a house or a car or something like that, some big thing that requires, or just a bank account, like moving your money from one bank to another, or a credit union, or whatever you're doing, right? They maybe require some extra thought, some decision making, some expertise, something that you need more information about. So how are you supporting that experience? And what I'm saying is, unpack that, look at the frustrations and the problems and the break points. Map those out, journey map those out, find out what those pain points are, those painful, those personas that had that frustration with the service or the experience before, and bring that to a new level. So, for example, one of the things that Levi's has just announced, and Tommy Hilfiger as well, that they're going to offer more online live streaming sales events. So they're going to preview merchandise online, and then you can order it from your phone or from the TV or the web, or on a live event. That's an example of sort of trying to pivot to this new, the changing environment. And it's just a small, leveraging technology. But what about those big ticket items? How do you connect with, one of the things that customers really liked was sitting down, going into a shop, going into a bank or whatever it was, and sitting down with an expert and seeing if they can make the right decision. Most of what we do is supporting good decision making in terms of user experience. Whether it's B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter if it's healthcare, it doesn't matter what it is. A consumer or a user has to make a decision, even if it's which button to push or which direction to go on a website. Or if they have data, what to do with the data, how to move it, or if they're buying a house or something, should they get this or should they get that? So you can hide behind the problem of COVID and say, well, you had a bad experience. Yeah, we're doing this on the phone, and we don't have the systems and, the database, and unfortunately, there's a lot of that going on. Then there are certain brands that are responding and saying, oh, wait a minute, we can actually elevate, we can actually differentiate and go and provide more elegance, than we even provided before. This is the opportunity, I think, to do that, to make that shift, to make that connection with customers, to connect with their pain points, to connect with how they make decisions, what collaboration needs they may have, but also to connect with their values, deeply connect with their values. In the case of the United States, you would be negligent if you were not looking at the current social issues. And then, of course, in the world context, the sustainability, the environmental issues, equally as important.
Karthik, I got a follow-up question to what the point Frank was making, I think, which is quite
yeah, actually, we had a question actually regarding the Black Lives Movement and the fact that, you know, it has brought to the forefront issues like systemic racism, etc. And how can UX and CX, you know, be used to drive inclusivity, diversity, and equality is something we'd really like to understand.
And sustainability now as well.
And sustainability, of course.
Oh, well, you have to come to my webinar on,
okay.
I have a webinar coming up on ethics in UX design, improving ethics in UX design. And it blew me away how popular the subscription for that topic is so important right now. And I didn't even realize how important, and a global audience of people. So people are really trying to understand that question that you asked. But in that webinar, what I'm going to be covering is, you know, unpacking the state of where we are today, you know, and where we are today is we have technologies and experiences that are designed in a certain way by certain people with certain assumptions and so forth. And it doesn't necessarily, is not necessarily good for us. It's not necessarily helpful. You know, a lot of stereotypes and biases and societal biases, or, you know, with AI, can learn to be racist, like Microsoft's bot a few years ago. They put it online, and some people on Twitter just taught the bot how to be racist, so it was spouting all this white supremacy, and Microsoft pulled the bot down. You know, but there are many examples of how to do this, and I'm going to be covering them on that webinar. But it's really important to look at the key areas. So, for example, so let's take the one I just mentioned: discrimination and racism in an algorithm. Right? Is our algorithm racist, or our bot racist? Is the question. And there are ways that, so I think actually with your last speaker, one of the suggestions that he made was the ethics audit.
Yes.
And so it's really important to audit and look at it like critically, like take a critical inventory of you know, who's being impacted, who's being served, and who's being underserved. You know, one of the messages of inclusion is that somehow at some point we're gonna have to get past let's say that equality is legislated even for women in the United States, which it's really not. It's not entirely legislated. So some very basic civil rights are still in play in the political and social. But let's say there's legislation, no more police abuse, no more racial profiling. Algorithms are monitored and cleaned up. At some point, we're going to have to address the elephant in the room, the big issue, which is that it's our business models that are largely prioritizing these user experiences, or you know, and you look at it, just take, like, some would be like, okay, well, wait a minute, let me just give me another example. Healthcare and wellness. So, for example, we have the concern in the last few years from Silicon Valley, because there's been so much outrage and so many books written about this. I've read 3, 4, or 5 of them myself, about digital addiction. You know, we create the Facebook wall, we create the notifications, we just keep ping, 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 and so it's really, so for me, what I've done in my work is think critically about how notifications are going to help the user. Give the user control over notifications. Let them manage it. Don't just see the business model of social media is, I need to keep bothering you every few minutes or hours or whatever, however active you are, because I need you to come on platform, because platform is being evaluated by advertising with time on site. Time on site is a metric that changed around 2008 or 9. Used to be visitors and the stickiness, and it went to how long you spend. So they want you to spend that time. They want you to keep coming back. They want to keep so we have these business models. Those are much more difficult to challenge But I think for UX designers and people in this field is bringing, make sure that you have diverse voices. One of the things, for example, that I've started doing the last few years is pushing back on recruiting by income. Because if you recruit by income cutoff, right. Like say 50,000 and below is considered like poverty in the U.S. It's 30,000 and below is like extreme poverty, and I think like basically 49,000 and below is considered like a poverty. So in most studies, you recruit users who are only above, because you're like, oh well, they can't afford that anyway, so we'll just. So you see, we have this bigger problem of if we build in those biases, we need to take a step back and look at all those decisions that we're making about who we include, who we bring to a user test, who we include in a study, what pain points we analyze and discover. And of course, it's going to depend product to product, service to service, but it's really important to start getting voices from users that you might not normally get. The accessibility battle is a good one if you want to fight that one. That's one that's been, again, there's another issue of a civil right that's just not fully legislated. Part of the problem is you have governments giving guidance, but they don't say specifically how. Even GDPR, which is European Union legislation for privacy, control of privacy, and the explicit transparency of what's happening with your data. Most, I would say like 98% of websites just say, accept these cookies, right? Accept these cookies. I think I just clicked on one a few minutes ago on my way here. And that's actually not what GDPR says. GDPR says you have to allow control. In other words, and there are many sites actually that do this, but it's about 2%. They give you the ability to choose cookies, turn them off and on, and they make it easy to do. Some sites, there's a big scrolling, all this technical text. So look at privacy. Look at these areas that that have to do with connection, right? So privacy. Should I track you? Should I monitor you? There's a new airplane for people traveling by air. They're going to introduce a new card that tests you so you get a COVID test, and then you have like a digital passport, and then you can get on the plane and you're clean. That's coming, right? That's in motion. That just was announced this week. But like, imagine taking that idea if you're a smaller, say, software firm, and you're like, okay, yeah, let's track people, and then let's stigmatize people, and let's, so you could take it in the wrong direction.
Yeah. So, Frank, if you were to sort of talk a little bit tactically, so I know you've talked, on your blogs quite in-depthly on sort of, journey maps, right, and the different kinds of journey maps that are out there. So if you were to sort of mitigate these, biases of, whether it's diversity, inclusivity, or sustainability, or to even sort of improve this sort of social aspect of COVID engagement or post-COVID engagement, what are the journey maps, and what are the different types of journey maps, and then are there specific journey mapping techniques or formats that you would recommend people follow over another? What is more effective or less effective?
Frank, okay,
there we go. Right.
Yeah, journey mapping is a nice tool. You mentioned that journey mapping is a nice tool to think about, like, how to record this. Deeper connection with your customers, let's say, because COVID can leave you disconnected from your customers or from your constituents or whoever it is. So find a way to get close to them. Find a way to bridge that gap. Try and use technology if possible, if it makes sense to. Mm-hmm. But first of all, you have to find out from them what their pain points are. It may be something you do on the back end. For example, in Greece during COVID, they changed the customer journey for senior citizens, for elderly people to go to the pharmacy to get prescription drugs. Mm-hmm. The government changed the rules so that they didn't have to go to the pharmacy with a prescription. They made it digital, and then they could just text the thing. So the elderly people were texting the pharmacy, and then the pharmacy could drop it off, or something. I think they had delivery as well, or somebody else could go pick it up. But it basically they took out like something like 30 million visits to the pharmacy to lower the exposure for elderly people.
Wow.
And it was like one of these things where they just took a problem and they just thought, well, just change the rule. What if we reevaluate our rules, just like the rules in our algorithms that dictate, or accidentally or inadvertently sometimes discriminate, or just by carelessness. Take a closer look at those and untangle those. And I think, so there's two journey maps. There's current journey state, what's happening right now, and there's future journey state, what's going to happen when you fix it and repair it and when someone drops in. And the journey map is so you asked me also what works. Like, let me talk a little bit about future state. Future state journey mapping, I think, is critical with COVID. And the reason is because of what I said earlier is you need to understand what's the felt experience for customers during COVID. Like, what is it that they need? Like what problems did they have before COVID? Now living a social distancing, having a social distancing service experience. What's broken about it now? Are they waiting 8 hours in the car park? Are they, not being told certain information or being misled by the customer service person, and then having to go do this and go do that, and run around and being serviced but not really as efficient and as streamlined as they could be. So within journey mapping, you can do user research and get data for both of those types of journey maps. By the way, you don't have to do two types of listening exercise. You can do one big scoop and of user research, and I don't mean testing. I mean actually like interviews and and I don't mean surveys or focus groups. Those are market research. So you can do a survey, but because you're trying to influence behavior, you want to know more about their current behavior. So best way is online interviews that are like ethnographic in nature, where you're just day in the life and talk me through. And there's a technique that we've been doing a lot of during COVID. It's called a diary study. You leave it with them over time. And the diary study is best used in conjunction with interviewing, so that it's not just them reporting their experience over a week or two. But the good thing about the diary is it gives you the over time. So you can do an interview with them, 30-minute, 40-minute interview even, and then leave them with a 2-week diary, check in on them the whole time of the 2 weeks, and then do an exit interview at the end. And we found that corrects the self-reporting problems in a diary. So a diary can bring you data, right? And the data then you can use to map your current state. What are people currently doing? What's broken right now? And if you don't already have that, and then the future state of what's the dream state of, even coming back from COVID, like what things are broken that you can tackle straight away, that you can repair, that you can heal, you can restore. Like, how can you fix those things? How can you provide better training or scripting to your employees so that when they interact with a customer, they know what to say? For example, I was riding my bike back home yesterday, and there were all these people looking, and a policeman, and I said, what are we? Everyone was gathered around, and I was like, what are we waiting for? It wasn't obvious. And he said to me, there's been an incident, and we're waiting for that to be resolved. And I thought, wow, you got some training for that answer. I found out later it was a guy that was trying to jump off a bridge. Oh. Hopefully not one of your customers. If you're listening to, but I'm joking, shouldn't joke, but it was the fact that he had a scripted response, to handle my inquisitive citizen, instead of just saying to me, oh, well, there's a guy, we think the guy is going to jump off this bridge, but it's about, the future journey map is about understanding there's this issue, and then we're going to resolve it. Now, so I talked about having research to feed into that. If you have a journey map that's not based on research, it's just forget it. Then there's no point. There's no point. You're not going to get the embodied, you're not going to get that felt experience. You're not going to get that data, that what we call outside in view, So it's important to do that research, that listening, again, connecting with your audience, and understanding how they want to be. We talk about inclusive design and we talk about sustainability, in the case of inclusive design, is like, how does your audience want to be engaged? How do they want you as a brand to lead on this? Would be the question. And
you had a question for Frank about the consumer goods, right? I mean, you want to ask that because I want to make sure that, I mean, a lot of what we've talked about is more sort of, on using technology, but I'd love to get Frank's thoughts on that. You had a great question earlier, so maybe you want to ask that now.
Yeah, okay. So Frank, it's interesting you talk about sustainability and stuff, because Lavi and I obviously are vegans and we're strong believers in adopting a plant-based diet, etc. So we were wondering, do the design principles of UX apply equally to consumer packaged goods? So for example, if you were designing a new plant-based yogurt, let's say, right? Like what are the areas you would look at, and when designing that experience, like what are the steps one would have to take, for example?
Yeah, it's really, really good question, because this is, I think, part of the new UX. You asked me earlier, like, what's changed with UX. I saw an exhibit recently of a fashion designer who was really big in the 1960s and 70s. And what interested me is that, well, first of all, she created this, what we call disposable fashion, or basically mass fashion. They said that her designs were shipped to 50 different cities around the globe, and also created the patterns for them, and so forth and so on. But you couldn't do that today, really. I mean, you couldn't do it kind of with a straight face, because what was happening is it created disposable fashion. Before that, people would essentially hold on to or repair something. Or now it was like cheap. Now it was easy to get. Now it was, everybody wanted to get it. And so you have lots of brands that create throwaway clothing. It's a big problem in the U.S. Most of the clothing ends up in the landfill. They don't recycle. There's no way to recycle. And it's all polyester based, most of it, right? Disposable, cheap, throwaway, what we call fast fashion, right? So we have that kind of like understanding. We all know what that is, more or less. But if you're creating a plant-based, I'm also vegan. I've been vegetarian for like 26 years or so.
Oh, wow.
Close to 27 years, yeah. And so I get you on that. And it's a personal choice, and it's an interesting one, to make. Steve Jobs was also a strict vegetarian. He just ate a little too much fruit. He's a fruitarian, and yeah, it just overloads your system if you're too much fructose, basically. But anyway, so your hypothetical, you're creating a plant-based or a sustainable brand. Well, the thing that you should know is that there are frameworks, just like there are frameworks. For example, Microsoft has an inclusive set of guidelines on the inclusive design, just to touch on that. They're all interrelated, so you should think holistically. Don't go single issue. Like somebody posted something on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and it was like, how about we get rid of, calling it human-centered design and call it community, call it ecology-centered design, or like basically, green-centered design, thinking about sustainability. And I can't get behind that, because you can't leave the humans out of it. It can't change this. It's the human-centered is still important. That we just need to expand human-centered, like Don Norman, who basically is the founder of human-centered design. He's 85 years old now. He advocates community-centered design. So we need to include community-centered approach. We need to include environment-centered or sustainability-centered approach as well. All these things they need to, and then of course, the inclusiveness is part of the community inclusive design. But there are standards, like Microsoft has some really nice standards for inclusive design. One of their former senior executives, she even wrote a book about inclusive design, Kat Holmes, and there also are the similar standards and guidelines for sustainability. So, for example, there's cradle to cradle. It's called cradle to cradle certification, and there are a number of brands who have they've actually just put out a lovely PDF with some like kind of case studies and quotes from different executives and different brands who have gone through a cradle to cradle certification. There's a technique as well. So there's a couple things, and I talked about these. I did some webinars when COVID kicked off, like a few weeks into COVID. I put out a webinar, and I talked about this on that. It's called life cycle analysis, or LCA, and life cycle analysis is an established. It's a framework that already exists. It's used in manufacturing. And we just don't know it in UX or in these other areas because it's kind of used in a different area. But basically, it's an upstream, downstream analysis. Mm-hmm. And there's a set of steps and a set of techniques that you use to assess the, so if you're going to, where you're sourcing from, of course, who your target audience is, and and making sure that you bring in the humanness into this product that someone's going to eat or wear or whatever, right? Bring in the emotion, bring in the social aspect of it, if possible somehow. Especially if it's digital, you can do that more easily. If you're creating a service with an app that, for example, in Korea, they have Coupang. It's a coupon site, and then they do something called Rocket Delivery in Korea. Okay. And Rocket Delivery, before Amazon or any of these other guys, they've been doing this for like 4 years now. And a Rocket Delivery is there's a cheerful man who shows up at your door with your package within like 12 hours, usually like 6 to 8 hours. So you order from your app, and the Rocket Man comes, and it's called Rocket Delivery. And what that is it's just speedy online service, but in a package, in a branding. And people say, the Korean customers say, we love seeing the Rocket Man. He comes to your door, and he's very smiley. So that guy is like my delivery guy for Amazon. He's just like, yeah, I had something delivered yesterday, and the guy, he's like, he put it to the wrong house, and then he's going to give the other person in a different house a note about the wrong house. And it was like, and so I caught him, and they said, oh no, this is for you. And something my wife ordered, and so he was like trying to fix it. He wasn't wearing a mask, and then I was down there with him, and then I just opened it and took the things out, and he was trying to scan it, and then he didn't know, and all this and it was like, but that's usually my typical Amazon guy's overworked, and he's like, here, this, okay, maybe occasionally might say hello, but just very functional and like a robot, whereas in Korea. Korea is valued about speed. So the reason they invented that is they had that social expectation in their culture of boom, 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 boom. Everything is fast in Seoul, South Korea. Is like speed, 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 speed. So the metaphor of rocket, was how they packaged that. But you see the same thing in Indonesia, for example, with Gojek. Gojek is it's actually a guy who studied in the States, and then he went back to Jakarta and created one of the fastest unicorn valuations to I think last time I checked, $1.5 to $2 billion valuation of his company. Used a similar Asian model of an app ecosystem, so you can do all the services in one app. And the Gojek is because of the traffic in Jakarta, they ride a lot of motorbikes, so you call a motorbike taxi. And the motorbike taxi comes and you order it and you jump on, you put a helmet on and you go. There's another company that notice them. They're a lot smaller. It's called LadyJack, and LadyJack is for women only. It's a Sharia friendly, because Indonesia is a Muslim country. Yeah. So, and for some women, they're very strict. They're not supposed to grab onto a man's waist and fly down the freeway. So there's LadyJack, but this is all done by app. Anyway, life cycle analysis, cradle to cradle. There are a lot of models and frameworks. It's the same with the thing I was talking about, social user experience. This has been around in the UX field since the 1980s, the early 80s. The early 80s when computers were not even like a thing. They were just expensive. Apple couldn't sell them. So this field, and it's sort of this, it's called computer-supported collaborative work, CSCW, is where they're academic discipline. But even the name of that is so obscure, and most UX people don't even know about it. But what it focuses on is what we call sociability. Like not usability, the use, but sociability is like, how does it facilitate, stimulate, or enhance social interactions? And it's also called sociality. But, I mean, these are almost like the academic words. Academics use that term.
Right.
I presented at a conference this summer, a HCI conference, Human Computer Interaction Conference, and it was like a lot of talk about sociality. But it's about how can you act, so for example, privacy with contact tracing, how can you ensure privacy, not that you're just legal, same with disability, how can you ensure you're not just legal on disability, on accessibility, but that you provide an enhanced and an elegant customer experience? That's what the key is. Take what we know about UX and CX, we know it creates business results. And we know it has to be grounded in research, and we know that it has to involve all your stakeholders when you do your journey map. That was the other point of that. Take that and elevate your experience. Use COVID as a magnifying glass, or as one of our audience said,
at the catalyst, accelerator.
Accelerator to incubate and to generate new ideas. Instead of stressing with the crisis, use the stress as the pressure to invent. To me, that's the only logical thing that you can do. But don't just deliver services and products as if humans are not interacting with them, and as if communities in the U.S., in all over the world, but particularly in the U.S. that has the race problem, is don't act like communities of color are not,
Right.
using your app or your experience or whatever, So that's what we mean by social UX and sociability or social user experience. Privacy is huge in some countries. The country is going to differ, but in the United States, the latest survey, Pew Research 2020 survey, privacy is huge. It's like something like 76-80% of consumers are concerned about privacy. We just did a study on privacy this year, actually. And one of the questions we asked is, do you mind the government if they track you? Just as one question that we were curious. And actually, most people said no. If it's for the public health good, they don't mind. Because the fear of if you're going to be tracked and you're, all of a sudden, if you're a government that wants to abuse power, all you have to do is take COVID as an excuse and add, and exploit the technology that today is only sort of used behind the scenes of the intelligence agencies,
right.
But exploit that technology and add geo tracking, IP tracking, and start to notice, oh yeah, I see Lavindra, he hasn't been brushing his teeth, or he hasn't been like wearing his mask, like, he left it off one time when he talked to his neighbor. We had a drone come in and check it out, face recognition. We know Lavindra, he tried to hide his face, behind the mask, whatever. This is the potential concern. And, it's in countries like the United States, where these ideals are supposed to be, clean. This is why Americans are concerned. It's different. You're in China. It's a very different politics. It's a different society. It's not necessarily, it's just different. So the needs are different. And so if you're a global brand, you need to check in with your people in those geographies and find out, what it is that they're experiencing from their national perspective. From just like in India, right? When Domino's came to India. And Pizza Hut as well. Domino's very popular fast food brand, and with Indian young people. And what they did is they created like chili pizzas. They created vegetarian options. There's a lot of vegetarian options, actually, a lot more than you get in the U.S.
Yes.
Even though I hear that more people are eating chicken and stuff these days.
Unfortunately.
Than used to be more strict. But, that was a play by Domino's to fit in, and, because you have to do that when you're localizing. You have to get the cultural rhythm. Well, guess what? The cultural rhythm is social. It's emotional. So the same at home, with your customers at home, with your constituents, whoever they are. Find out what the social and cultural rhythms are, and use that to enhance and to construct the new experience or the new journey that you'll create for them.
Brilliant, Frank. I think, in closing, so I think what you're talking about with all these sort of established standards from maybe manufacturing and others. So there is definitely a way to sort of link the virtual and real world experiences in a sort of a continuum for, say, somebody doing consumer goods, right? I mean, you could use, you can tell the story. You can use, you can get a yogurt, have AR on it, and then you can tell the story about how it was sourced, how it was farmed, right? All of that stuff, right? So you can combine this sort of digital technologies with sort of, hard goods, as we call them, right? I mean, that would be sort of the new experience. Is that what you mean by sort of combining all of this and using these standards to create a sort of an end-to-end experience? So,
I mean, potentially. So, potentially that could be the case. And it's not to say that the solution is just, it's like build an app and then connect everything up and that. Right. It's more like what is the essence of that experience? This is what I'm saying to you is discover the true essence of the experience. So, because, for example, I'll tell you one brand that I worked with did really well, actually, rolling out e-commerce to 35 countries. And it went off the scale and actually had a 300% increase in revenue over 2 years from the rollout. But one of the things they had is like a tag that tracked the fabric back to the farmer, right? They've actually removed that, and they were bought by another company now just recently, and they've removed that thing. Well, when we did research a few years ago with that, find out that people didn't really know what it was. It also faded when you washed it after one time, the numbers. But the other thing too is with that tracing and tracking is that still the relevant story in sustainability today? Is it? I don't know. Or is it something else? Is it another connection that says maybe the today's consumer is a little more skeptical and they say, show me some data. Show me how this farm is using, its chemicals and its products. Show me this. Let me hear a story about the supply line. Let me see a third-party verification. Tell me more about what I've heard about conflict minerals, for example. I guess right now I heard the big manufacturers, Apple and Google, that do smartphones, are creating a what's called there's a Dutch company that's called a Fairphone. It's called Fairphone smartphone, and it's basically you can repair that thing. You buy it, and it will never break. It runs on Android, but you can repair something like 95% of all the parts. They give you a screwdriver and all the thing. You can go on the phone and fix it, which is actually how most stuff is done in Africa. By the way, most parts of Africa, you go to Africa, something's broken, it gets fixed, no problem. An incredibly resilient, way of approaching business already that came out of the need, of we can't just throw it away, we need to think. But I guess Google and Apple are working on a sustainable phone. But, again, in other words, is this all just PR? Sustainability, inclusiveness, disability, good social. Is this all just public relations? Is this just about a marketing story for people? You have to be careful with that. If that's how you see it, you're going to run into trouble, because one of the things we know about UX is it's not how it looks, the shiny package. Yes, that's important, but it's also when they take a bite, when they tear into it, when they wear it, when they live with it, when they're with it for more than just that, brief kiss. How is the experience, once, 2 years down the road? So that means that it's very important to check in. So you did your initial research where you felt you got the sense of embodiment, and you went, okay, this is what's going on. Oh my God, we have to fix these broken cracks. But once you launch it, once you fix it, you need to keep measuring. I just got I ordered something the other day, last week. They said 2 weeks ago, they said it would take 2 weeks. Actually, a new VR headset, right? I'm doing a project right now, a healthcare project that involves VR. So I bought the latest headset, and they said it's going to be just being released, I think, today. And actually, it was just delivered today. But they sent me a survey 4 days ago saying, how was that? Do you enjoying that product? And I was like, And it's the same thing as soon as you talk to customer service, they say, we're going to send you a survey and ask you now, how was that? So they text you or they call you back or you wait and they talk you through. What's the problem with that is that person hasn't fully experienced the promise that the customers, I'm going to give you a refund, I'm going to fix you or whatever, it's all taken care of. So you just on blind faith, you're like, oh, thank you, and you're very nice, and that's all nice because they've trained them well. But then you come to find out they didn't fix it. The same problem, you've got to call back. Now you're double mad. You were mad before, now you're really mad, And so it's important, like the timing of evaluation is one thing that many people miss. And so just a little tip there in terms of important to evaluate post-measurement. Usually that's done with a survey of some sort of customer satisfaction. But you might want to check in, and this is actually where diary studies traditionally could be used. And I just mean COVID or no COVID. The problem we have with user testing, we test something, the user uses it, and then that's it. We get the feedback. A diary gives you like a probe, like a week out after they've used it over time. Then you start to get some more like details. And because I've been doing so many diary studies with COVID, online research and diary studies, I'm starting to think that it may be good to do that with user testing, even if it's 3 days or 5 days, even if it's one touch point diary, just to check in and go, hey, you helped me on Monday. Now it's Friday. You've been playing with this app, and they just go, oh, I deleted that. Yeah, I tested it with you. It seemed really fun. I loved it. And then I showed it to my, whoever, daughter, son, whatever, colleague, boss, and they were like, oh, that's stupid. Here's this other app, It doesn't have the basic feature of this weather app. You're using this weather app? Or there's another one, And this one doesn't track you because most of the weather apps in the U.S. Track you. They sell your data, apparently. You can Google that. It's apparently a big problem with privacy. So that's maybe a recipe for as you roll out, then make sure you measure sensibly.
Frank, it's been sort of an amazing hour. I think we could go for another one, but I think it's a fascinating discussion, and I'm sure our viewers would have learned a lot. I personally did. I am enlightened by some of the things that you said. Excited actually to sort of embrace this new post-COVID or COVID, whatever world you want to call it, where user experience takes center stage. And I think the authenticity, the integrity, the embodiment, I think, were the core there. I mean, you have to sort of make sure you whatever UX you design has those values in there. I think that was a great sort of course correction that you mentioned, or a caveat that you put. So I hope all of us sort of take that to heart. Your webinars that you mentioned, and the ones both in the past and in the future, are they? I think we put your site or the blog on. Is there something that somebody can sort of come to your website and register for and participate in? Yeah,
the Medium link that you put up.
Yes.
There's a post there, I think now, and that'll take you. I think it'll take you to a. There's a waiting list. Unfortunately, it's sold out. Sold out twice. I increased the thing, and that's what I'm saying to you. It's unbelievable how popular this topic is. Some of the questions you guys asked me, and I really enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much. But also very relevant and very and I think our challenge is to systematize this knowledge and just start practicing it. Just start building it in, start thinking of sustainability, those questions that you guys asked. We should be thinking those as we, if you're on a product or service or development team, or you're in charge of creating something, you need to take a step. The thing is, if you ignore it now, just like with COVID, it's going to come back to bite you. And you need to look at the data of what's important to consumers. Sustainability is really big right now. Connecting with values is really big right now. Diversity, very big right now. Inclusiveness. So these things are not just going away. It's not just the COVID has fundamentally shifted the conversation, and it's opened up potential opportunities. I think the smart individuals, companies, and brands, designers, whoever you are the ones who are going to understand that this is a moment to define anew and afresh. And if you haven't been doing it properly before, do it properly now. fix it, repair it, reevaluate. The lessons of COVID. Stay resilient. And I think I'll leave you with those messages now. But yes, they can find it on that blog, or I think on our website as well, or they can catch me on LinkedIn is a good way to get the latest and greatest.
Frank, thank you so much. I think I speak on behalf of Karthika as well. It's been an amazing hour, and we do direct anybody who's interested to definitely visit Frank's website, LinkedIn page, and if you're particularly interested in UX, and I think most people should be, it doesn't mean that you have to be a UX designer, but even if you're a CEO, you might want to sort of start paying attention to experiences in general, right? So I think this world is now more about experiences than products and services. So just, I think it would behove you to sort of look up Frank, maybe subscribe to his to a class and take it and get yourself a little bit more aware of all of the latest trends. I certainly have felt that I've learned a ton. Frank, thank you again for spending this hour with us, and all the very best for all of the stuff that you're doing. And we hope that your family and everybody else stays safe.
Thank you so much. Likewise, guys, and thanks for having me on the show.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.